Mr. Mekki, thank you for this interview. How are accession talks with Macedonia going on, and are there any open issues, weak spots so far detected beside the ratification of the Prespa agreement?
Well, I think the accession talks are going extremely well. We've had a number of formal sessions between the government and the international staff here at NATO headquarters. Most of those were conducted in the October timeframe, and since that time, since October, we've been focused on preparing the country's plan for continuation of reforms, which is a key document the government must submit at the time that we sign the accession protocol. And so this is the main area of work that we've had in the time since October, trying to identify the key areas where the government commits itself to continue with reforms after we sign the accession protocol.
Having in mind information that were made public concerning Russia's attempts to infiltrate security and intelligence structures in Macedonia, my question here is this issue, and to what extent, part of the accession process?
Well, one of the key elements of being a good NATO ally is to have a strong security service. And so obviously we have a deep process of consultation with the services in Skopje, and we're talking to them about a number of challenges that they face across a number of different fronts. We have had problems in the past with regard to outside interference in the NATO accession process. So we have a number of strong lessons learned, and we have a number of ways in which we work with the candidate countries, the aspirant countries, in order to help them to head off those challenges.
Macedonian authorities have announced idea of vetting of security structures. Are you familiar with this initiative?
Well, as I said, we're talking very closely with the government in Skopje to try and identify what is the best way forward in terms of reforms. The most important thing is to make sure that NATO allies have a high degree of confidence in the security and intelligence services at the time the country becomes a member of the alliance, because that then entitles them to access to NATO classified information. So it's a process that's been going on for some time, so it's not like it's all brand new. But what we've done is we've worked very closely with the authorities in Skopje to make sure that they're taking all of the steps necessary to demonstrate a solid track record and ensure that that high degree of confidence is there with allied services.
If ratification process of Prespa agreement both in Macedonia and Greece goes as planned, when can we expect for the accession protocol to be signed, and when can we expect Macedonia to become full-fledged member of the alliance?
Well, obviously we don't know the exact timeline because it's due to sort of the political process both in Skopje and in Athens. But I think what we've heard leaders in both countries saying, at least in Skopje, we've heard the leadership saying they hope to have the Prespa agreement, the implementation of the Prespa agreement, completed by the middle part of January. And so that would then allow us to move forward on the NATO side with the signature of the accession protocol. We don't really know, have as much clarity on the timelines in Athens, because obviously we're waiting for the first part of that process in Skopje to take place. What we do know is from the time that we sign the accession protocol, we can only go based on past experience. But after we sign the accession protocol, it usually takes about 12 to 14 months for all of the allied parliaments to ratify the accession protocol. So if, for instance, we were signing the accession protocol towards the end of January, beginning of February of 2019, I think by, say, February or March of 2020 is when we could expect the country to come into the alliance. But of course, that's very notional. The details of that exact timing have to be worked out still.
The upcoming ministerial meeting, one of the focus is going to be Russia's posture towards NATO. We've seen a lot of statements from Russian officials and Russian ambassadors concerning Macedonia's integration into NATO. Do you see these statements as a clear threat towards Macedonian process of integration into the alliance?
Well, I think the Russian Federation has made its position clear, and that's its right to make its position clear. But at the end of the day, we don't really allow the Russian Federation or any country, any third party, to have a veto over the NATO integration process. And so what counts for us is the opinion of the NATO allies and the opinion of the candidate country. And so what we hear from the political leaders in Skopje, what we've seen through a number of parliamentary motions, is that there is very solid support in the country for membership in NATO. And that's what matters to us the most, is we believe that it's every country's right to choose its own defense and security arrangements. And this is what the country is telling us that they want. And so NATO allies have responded in a positive way. And so we're moving towards that shared goal now.
A couple of hours ago, I asked Secretary General concerning the case of Gruevski, ex-Prime Minister, who fled to Hungary. From perspective of rule of law and the credibility of NATO, how do you see the process of escaping Gruevski through two countries members of NATO and finally ending up getting some kind of safe haven in Hungary, which is also a member state of NATO?
Well, I think it's too early to speculate on that because obviously there's a number of judicial procedures that are ongoing. So I really don't want to comment too much on the specifics of that. I think obviously there are a number of ongoing investigations and discussions in that regard. I think what we would say, though, is that we have a high degree of confidence in the rule of law in Skopje. And we believe the country's made great strides in terms of its accountability of its judiciary and the transparency and professionalism of its judiciary. And so we do believe that there is a solid process in place to address accusations of crime. And so this is not a country where we have worries about the rule of law.
Opposition in Macedonia still rejects the Prespa agreement, which is the keystone of the NATO integration process now for Macedonia to become part of the alliance. How do you comment the stance of the opposition party, ВМРО ДПМН, clearly being against the Prespa agreement, and with the possibility or eventuality that in some time in the future they will become the ruling party?
Well, NATO has and NATO always will work with all political actors in the country. We don't sort of work only with people that we have a history of working with, or we only work with exclusive political parties. We work with all political actors in the country, and that's going to continue to be the case in the future. I think in terms of the Prespa agreement, it's up to all of the political actors in the country to decide the way forward. What matters to NATO is that we have a clear offer on the table to the country, which is if the country implements the Prespa agreement, we will move forward with bringing the country into NATO. The country will become a member of NATO after implementation of the Prespa agreement. So that's NATO's position. The offer is on the table. It is up to all political actors in the country to decide for themselves whether they feel that that is a good enough offer for them to move forward. I personally tend to think that it is. I think it's a historic opportunity for the country to move forward, to become a member of the NATO alliance, to secure the country and its borders for the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.